Almost there. Okay, Chair, when you're ready, you can start the meeting. We're now live streaming on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the virtual meeting of the South East Devon Habitat Regulations Executive Committee, which is today on the 29th of April 2021. I'm your chair for this afternoon. I'm Councillor Rachel Sutton, representing Exeter City Council. And I'd also like to welcome everybody who has joined the meeting, either as a councillor taking part, officers supporting us, and welcome to anyone who's watching this via the live streaming. All the participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the committee is being recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout. May I remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this committee is dependent on internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us while we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we're not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please would you all make sure that your microphones are muted when you're not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Please try to keep your points short and try not to repeat points that have already been made, and please don't interrupt other speakers. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. I'll now start the committee by asking DSO Debbie to do the roll call of everyone here present. Could you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you've confirmed that you're present, please mute your microphone again. So Debbie, if you could do a roll call for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start with you, Councillor Sutton.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Wrigley.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Young, please.
Present.
Great, thank you. I can confirm that you can go ahead, Chair your quorum with all your members present. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, members. Agenda item 1 is public speaking, and we have no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of previous meetings, and we have minutes from our 2 previous meetings. So if anyone has any comments on the last set of meetings, please would you raise your electronic hand. And if we could start with the November minutes, I have both the other committee members. I think Councillor Young was slightly ahead, so we'll take Councillor Young and then Councillor Wrigley, please. Councillor Young.
I think it might be the same question. What was the outcome of agreeing the minutes from the previous meeting?
Was yours the same question, Councillor Wrigley?
Well, it's certainly related to that, but there's a number of issues that flow from that, of course. And I was very pleased, Chair, that you brought up the fact that we have 2 sets of minutes to agree, not just 1.
We do indeed, we do. Now, I was actually sent a transcript of, because if my understanding is correct, we didn't agree the meeting of I believe it was the 20th of July at our November meeting, because we were going to go back and look at the transcripts, which officers have now done. I'm juggling screens. I have actually seen a copy of the transcript, which other councillor colleagues may not have done. Are any of the officers able to take us through that transcript and hopefully clarify the points from the July minutes that came up at our November meeting?
Yeah, shall I attend? This is why I'm going to try and use my IT with 2 screens.
Thank you, Anita.
Try and share. Shall I start with the transcript of the 14th of July meeting, the earlier meeting, or should I start with the second one? First one?
Well, actually, maybe perversely, maybe if we start with the November one, because it was the November meeting that raised the questions on the July minutes. So that might be a better way of doing it, unless either Councillor Young or Councillor Rigby feels otherwise.
Okay,
Sorry to confuse you on that.
No.
Perhaps should have said that earlier.
that's fine. I just need to.
Chair, if I may, I'm not sure there's necessarily any difficulty on the transcript with the November meeting. It was really the agreement in the July meeting that was key.
Yeah, it's really around the context, because if anyone is watching this, I would like them to be aware of why we're looking at the July minutes at the April meeting. Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
yeah, I can actually see it on the other screen as well. So this.
Yep, I can. Yep.
I'm going to make it as large as I can. You may find you've got, and I think that's on Skype, sometimes you get a box at the top that says fit to screen, but you may not. I can read that on my laptop, I think. So that was the November meeting where we hit the issue that the minutes from the previous meeting weren't agreed. So this is the transcript that's been made of that. I can play the video, the YouTube clip, if members wish, but this is the transcript that is as it was. So we hit the issue that the minutes weren't agreed. So that, I think, leads us back to the previous transcript.
Yeah, and I think the key point is Councillor Wrigley, you raised the point under paragraph 47. Thank you, the cursor's there, when we discussed the 2020-2021 annual business plan. And I think this is where you were raising the point that about changing the resolution. Yeah, is that correct? Is that your...
Chair, I think what we said was in the July meeting, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused because I've not seen these, so this is all new stuff.
Okay.
Trying to see where we're going with this. The fundamental point was in the July meeting, when we had the business plan put for us for approval, we approved it subject to the measures of success being added. And if you recall, we had a conversation about how do you put in measures of success about changing the car park round. And I said, well, it's fairly simple. At the moment, we've got a number of cars parking in the wrong places. How many cars we've got parking in the wrong places after we make the changes? You know, not that tricky a thing to put into place, really. And that wasn't mentioned in the minutes, or that wasn't mentioned at all. So that was what I wanted to fix, so that we could actually get the measure of success, so that we know we're doing the right things and what we're doing is having an effect.
Okay, so that's where we were in November, and this is the transcript from July. Anita.
Yeah, that's there. So the relevant point is the recommend. So that's the recommendation that comes. Sorry, I'm confused.
No.
Oh, fantastic! There we are. Exactly. There we go.
Mm-hmm. But I think in November the feel was that there was an expectation that something was coming back to the November meeting, that it had said the next meeting, which it doesn't. And I think the question for us as officers is, what exactly would you like the minute to say that it doesn't already?
This is a bit late in the day to be raising this. This surely should have been raised before this meeting and addressed, because you're asking now for us to go back and change these things live without having a chance to think about it, presenting evidence on screen immediately, which is, I think, a little bit unfair. But I would like the minutes to reflect the fact that we made that amendment, which was that we asked for measures of success to be added to that report.
Okay, just bear with me a moment. I'll just stop sharing a moment and just find the minutes.
If at the time officers were unsure what we were asking for in July, that would have been the time to ask what was wanted, not nearly.
I think the difficulty. Apologies, sorry to interrupt. I think the difficulty was the officers weren't aware in July that I think they had provided what they thought was required. I think what happened in the committee meeting is that we asked for something different, so then we have to go back to them.
So in the committee meeting in July, we said that we would accept the business plan for the year, subject to measures of success coming forward, and we gave examples of what that might be. I'm sorry, I don't understand the confusion. Surely it's quite simple.
Well, clearly, I mean, clearly there is confusion, because this is why we find ourselves here now. I mean, what I'm kind of seeking is how committee members wish to go forward. I mean, are you satisfied that additional measures have come forward or not? Because if you're not,
No.
we're going to have to park these minutes
no,
again.
Clearly not. Has the what measures are being put in place? You know, we talked there very explicitly in July about the £200,000 that's being spent reconfiguring the car park, and what were the measures of success that we were going to look at, the measures before and after we'd done the action.
And we can only do that for going forward. We can't do that retrospectively.
Everything we do is retrospective here, surely, because we're not getting input earlier on in the process, which was why in one of these other meetings we also had an explicit discussion about looking at the way this this body is run and governed, and I don't think we've moved forward on that one either.
Well, would you like to make a proposal for going forward, Dan? Because I'm sorry, you say it's very simple, but I'm really not understanding what you're asking Councillor Young and I and the committee to do.
I'm asking for us to actually live up to what we said in July, which is that the 2021 annual business plan should have measures of success within it that we can look at, and we should be looking at now in the review. And if that is too difficult and we can't explain it now, perhaps we need to adjourn here and actually discuss what this means and how we can put this forward. If this was going to be an issue, I'm surprised that nobody spoke to me and asked me what I was looking for, or what I was asking about. We've had nearly a year since this meeting.
Chair, can I just,
most of which I've been sat here at home.
Anita.
Debbie, I'm struggling just to find the minutes as they were presented to the last meeting. I think I'm just looking past them. I don't know whether you can find those. And of course, this is not a year old. This is from the only time there was any indication there was an issue. Was it the November meeting?
Was it November? Yeah.
And I believe there has been some officer discussion since. I don't know whether that, and it's certainly it's something that East Devon officers had raised internally. Whether that's been raised, I suspect is a member for an issue for your own authority, perhaps. But I'm just trying to find the minutes, and if we can display the minutes, because this is only about the minutes. This isn't about the business plan. It's not about the content of the business plan. It is simply about the minutes. Yeah. I apologise. I had it keyed up and now I can't find them.
The minutes of the meeting in July, when we made decisions which have not subsequently been carried forward, which was then discovered in November. You're right, that was discovered in November, but the amendment to that proposal was made in July. And if that was misunderstood at the time, that's when it should have been raised and questions should have been asked about what was needed to fulfill it. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept that this has only been an issue since November. This was something that we started in July, which is, albeit not quite a year ago, 9 months ago. I'm sorry, time has.
Well, it came up as a result of the November, when we met in November, we
Yes.
considered the minutes of the July meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's what Anita is saying. What we're dealing with is the minutes of the July meeting.
Yes, but the flip side of that is if we as a committee are making decisions and having an input as to what is going on with this body in terms of spending what is a considerable amount of money, and those decisions are neither being written down in the minutes nor being actioned, then I have to question what we are doing.
Well, I don't think there is a flip side, because we're considering the minutes. Now, we either agree the minutes or we don't agree the minutes, and you know, we could carry on indefinitely running meetings without approving minutes of previous meetings. And it seems to me that the substantive agenda items are the significant point about how we are going to operate going forward. I mean, we cannot change what happened prior to the July 2020 meeting. We can't change history.
No, I fully understand that. I'm not expecting us to. What I am expecting is for decisions that are made in this committee to be carried out.
Well, if you don't think they are, then I think it's.
So
I don't know where we.
We decided in July. Excuse me. Sorry. We decided in July that we wanted measures of success added to the 2021 business plan, and it hasn't happened.
So I think, Chair, this is the, sorry for the delay. This is the.
No, it's fine.
These are the minutes. So these are the, sorry, I'll stop scrolling in a minute. These are the 14th of July minutes. And I think the issue that was being referred to was minute 44, the annual business plan. I think that's the, so I will stop scrolling. So during discussion, the following points were noted. And these were the resolutions that progress. Let's try and highlight those. We won't highlight. Progress made in delivering the 2019-2020 annual business plan. We noted that the status of mitigation measures. Am I on the right?
Yeah.
Lecture?
I
Yep.
don't. With respect, I don't think you are. I don't think it was 44. I think it was further down, wasn't it? Because it was not reviewing what had been done. It was looking at what was planned. So in July we had an option. It was the approval of the business plan.
I think it's
which on the
item
transcript you had a
47.
moment ago, you did have a paragraph number with.
It was 47, resolution 1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
There we go.
Right, so annual business plan. So those were the resolutions as they were recorded in the July minutes, which then went to the November meeting, which was, of course, the next meeting for approval.
The issue is that the amendment was the issue number, resolution number 1, which I've just lost off my screen.
So, yeah, sorry, I was just going to.
Yeah, are we there now? Okay. Resolution number 1 was that the business plan be approved subject to the addition of the measures of success. That was what was stated, and I think that's what we've just seen in the transcript.
So I'll just pop back to the transcript. The other transcript, that one. So if we add, and I think this is what we want to just confirm, if we add the wording.
So if you look at my suggestion there, we go through, are we happy with his recommendations, said the chair. I said, no, not as they stand, I'm afraid. Chair, so you're proposing an amendment that we accept this for now, but we ask for measures of success for each of the investments outlined in this report.
Mhm.
Are you happy with that amendment?
So if we add that wording to, I'm just going to flick back to the PDF, back to resolution 1.
Now, the impact on today's meeting is that we have a report against the annual business plan, which hasn't got any measures of success in it.
And that's something that can be picked up at that point. This is the aim at this stage is to get past the minutes.
Yes.
Councillor Wrigley, are you content with that addition to point number 1 on the July minutes?
At this point, I'm going to need to see it written down or read out or very clear, because right now we've had so many different bits and pieces flashed up in front of us. I'm really not sure. And
Okay.
I'm
So if
sort
I
of
go through it again
disappointed that wasn't done before the meeting.
Okay.
So 14th,
Are you seeing it on screen now, Councillor Wrigley? I beg your
I can
pardon.
see the transcript. I cannot
Yeah.
see what is being proposed as the amendment to the minutes.
Well, the
from the
highlight
previous
is
meeting.
that
we'll re-highlight it again. Okay,
thank you.
Right, there we go. That we accept this now, but we ask for measures of success for each of the investments outlined in the report. So that would be the addition that we would add, not the detail of those. And I wonder if this is where the confusion comes, not the details of those, because the detail wasn't set out at the time. The recommendation was to include that. Now, of course, the reality is that the recommendations will already have been taken forward through the relevant authorities in their original form.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that last remark. But the committee said we wanted measures of success added to that business plan. Now I understand we're now a year on from that business plan. It's all done, but we have a report today in front of us about what's gone on in the last year. And again, we have nothing in there in terms of.
Well, can we stick with the minutes for the time being, and we'll get on to the business plan when we get to that agenda item. I think the question now, there's a paragraph highlighted, and I think what Anita is asking is are we content that we add the highlighted sentence to the minutes of the July 2020 meeting?
Which I can flick. Do you want me to flick back to those again, Chair? If I flip back to, so that's, for some reason this page won't highlight as a PDF. So it will say that the 2020-2021 annual business plan, Appendix A to the report, be approved, and the commitments and actions, sorry, typo in that, and actions set out therein. And then we add one that we to include measures of success for each of the investments outlined in the report, which is
Can we use the word subject to measures of success? Because that was what we said.
It's not. I'm not.
That may not be the word there, but that would be the word that would clarify what it was we talked about. And that my mistake was not having it read out and having that resolution read out and clearly done in terms of agreeing that before we put it down.
The wording that you can see now is the wording from the YouTube transcript. So it doesn't, and I'm not trying to be pedantic, it doesn't say subject to. The minutes should reflect what was said.
I'm happy with that. But in
so I suppose it probably doesn't matter.
Clear that business report was to be updated or have additional measures of success brought forward to go with it. I don't mind whether the original report is updated or whether measures of success are added as an additional item.
So, Chair, I think you need a suggestion perhaps of the wording. Maybe the joining words don't matter.
I mean, it wasn't my request to add to the. I'm content that the paragraph that's now highlighted on my screen is added to the minutes, because that is taken from the transcripts. That is what actually was said. And if the minutes are to be a true reflection, that's what we need to add in. I'm content to propose that those are added in if councillors Young and Wrigley are content with that.
I'm content so long as I can see what it's actually going to look like. I mean, having fallen foul of not having what I thought we'd said written down, I'm concerned not to fall foul of the same error again. So what I'd like to see is what the proposed new minute actually reads, which I think I've got, I think I can see, but I just want to be absolutely 100% clear because we apparently weren't.
Well, it adds in the highlighted paragraph that we asked for measures of success for each of the investments outlined in the report to be added in to the first resolution on is it paragraph 47 of the July meeting minutes?
Yeah. So in there, let me just flip my screens a minute, and I'll just, if I put this on my second screen, you'll only see one of them. So if I read it, sorry, too many screens and too much Zoom. So it will say that the 2021 annual business plan (brackets appendix A to the report) close brackets be approved, and the commitments and that needs to say and actions set out therein include measures of success for each of the investments outlined in the report.
Fantastic. I'm deliriously happy.
Great. Is Councillor Young equally deliriously happy?
Yeah, I would like to move forward. Bearing in mind the July meeting was, I stood in at the last minute. And
indeed, you did.
And I can see Councillor Wrigley's point that we need to now, if we're protecting a certain bird, now have we increased the amount of birds in numbers, because and then we need to count the birds every year, and now in 2020 now how many birds do we have, how many birds have we got in 2022, and that's a success. If there's a failure, we need to understand why there is a failure. Same, but then now spending money on a van with some wonderful displays on it. How can we attribute success to that? Not very much, but it's where we can attribute success or failure, then we should be able to do it. That's how I understand is where Martin is coming from.
Absolutely right. You know, if we're saying we're going to put up a signpost to encourage people to take the better path, then beforehand we should know that lots of people taking the wrong path, and then after we put up signposts, lots of people taking the right path. It doesn't have to be a massive issue about the entire population of the birds. It can just be a measurable change in behavior has been achieved through this particular action, or whatever it is that we want to achieve with it. I just want to make sure that when we make an investment, we know why we're doing it, we know what we want to achieve from it, and we can make a very clear measure that we have achieved something from doing it. So we're not just busy fools, we're actually doing something worthwhile. We need to make sure that we are here to preserve the X and the wildlife, and not just here to tick boxes to say, yes, we've done it. We need to be a real environmental power for good and not a greenwash.
Okay, so are we happy to accept the minutes of the meeting held in July 2020, subject to the additional wording that we've just put in?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Councillor Wrigley? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So we then move on to the minutes of the November meeting. Are we content to accept those minutes?
Can I propose the minutes as read?
Okay, thank you. Are you in agreement, Councillor Wrigley?
Yes, I think I had no issues with those minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, right.
Thank you.
Well, I agree as well. So we have accepted the minutes. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Anita, for your help with that. So agenda item 3 is apologies. So I haven't had any apologies because all 3 members of the committee are present. And agenda item 4 is declarations of interest. Councillor Wrigley.
I will declare my usual declarations of interest that I'm a member and treasurer of the Cockwood Boat Club, which is a user of the estuary just off the X there, and that I look out over the estuary from my house. Thank you.
Councillor Young, did you have anything?
Yes, I hadn't declared them before, but I feel I should, especially the Pebblebed Heath. I'm a board member of the Pebblebed Heath's NNR, and I'm also a parish councillor for Woodbury Parish Council, which does include part of the Pebblebed Heaths and part of the estuary. I discovered the other day when I looked at the map. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Wood, did you?
Thank you, Chair. It was just on the previous item. We have received apologies from Alison Slade at Natural England.
I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. Yes, I was just thinking about members of the committee, but thank you. Yes, if they could be recorded. Great. So Debbie, got both of those declarations of interest. I don't have any declarations of interest to add to this, and neither do I have any matters of urgency on agenda item 5. Agenda item 6 is to deal with any confidential or exempt items, and there are none on this agenda that would require us to exclude the press and public. Agenda item 7 is the 2020 to 21 annual business plan. Who's presenting that? Is that Andy? You doing
That's correct,
that?
Chair. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So a very short introduction from me. This is the annual report of the 2020-21 business plan. The report includes an update of the various mitigation measures that are underway or have been underway for the last year. Clearly, I just wanted to highlight one particular aspect, which relates to the comment at the end of the report from Natural England about the impact from recreational pressure on the 3 sites as a result of the pandemic and the heightened pressure that is identified there, and the impact on the need for the strategy to be implemented going forward. As a result, also that relates to the 3rd recommendation, just to flag, certainly from my own perspective, very proud of the team members for the adaptability they've shown in the course of last year in the face of the change in circumstances and restrictions from the pandemic, and how members of staff have stepped up and dealt with that on site. So I'm very grateful to them.
Thank you. Councillors, any comments? Councillor Wrigley.
I think you know what I'm going to say. Where are the measures of success? How successful were these projects that were completed? Did they work? Did they do what we wanted them to? Also, in the introduction, it's incorrect because it doesn't mention that it was approved subject to adding measures of success at that meeting.
Okay, Andy, did you want to come back on that?
Yes, I think we'll come on to this in the next business plan as well around measures of success. I would, though, just add that we did have, I think, a pretty fulsome debate about the monitoring framework that sits alongside the strategy back in October 2019. And about the options for how that works. There are various indicators that form part of, if you like, the wider measures of success that continue to be monitored and recorded going forward. There will be further reports coming. Particularly highlighted here is the wildlife refuge monitoring, which will come to the next committee, for example. So those, if you like, I understand the point that's being made. It is difficult for us to get to a full suite of, if you like, measured success and understanding how, I'm trying to understand in my own mind, how that relates to the existing monitoring framework. There are specific investments, if you like, in the gazebo, where a measure of success would, I think, be quite difficult to define personally. And it's a question of what dashboard is meaningful going forward, and how we agree that, I think, is one of our challenges. We will, as I say, come back to that as part of the forward-looking business plan for next year as well.
Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you, Chair. So a gazebo is not a significant investment. Measure of success, yeah, new gazebo is great, fantastic, success. That's all it needs to be. Website redesign, for example. What was wrong with the old website? What are we trying to achieve with the new website? Make it easier to navigate, bring more users on board, get more audience to it. What are we trying to do? The measure of success is look at the analytics beforehand, look at the analytics afterwards. It's very straightforward. Not every measure of success is counting the number of birds in a flock. You know, for specific actions, either those specific actions have no immediate purpose, in which case I'd say, why are we doing them? Or those specific actions are designed to do something, in which case we need to highlight what it is to do and how we are going to determine whether that has been done. I'll come back to the car park changes. We were presented with a £200,000 investment to change bits and pieces about the car parks to prevent people parking on the verges and parking in the wrong places. The measures are very straightforward. Initially, we've got 25 people parking in the wrong places habitually every week. Afterwards, we've got 2. Success. Fantastic. Easy. So let's not kid ourselves that the answer to measuring success from an investment is always going to be the world's happiness has increased. You know, you're never going to measure that. But if you're going to make changes to a car park, if you're going to put up a sign to say use this footpath, not that footpath, if you're going to change visitor behavior, what's the ongoing activity to see that that is actually working, to see that it's making a difference, to see that we're using this money in the right way to actually make an ecological good out of what we're doing, and not just doing actions because they're written in a plan 5 years ago. That's my big issue.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. On page 11, it's got wildlife refuge monitoring, which is one of the key issues, and it's got point number 2 on it. Going down to, scroll down to the bottom, and it says overarching review report expected summer of 2021. Can we have a bit more meat on that? What was it monitoring, and what do we expect to find out from that? Thank you.
Through you, Chair.
Thanks. Thank you,
Yes.
Andy.
So that is a piece of work that's been undertaken for us by Footprint Ecology, monitoring the impact of the wildlife refuges in terms of monitoring bird populations, for example. That is a report that is in draft at the moment and will be finalised to come formally to you as a key piece of evidence to the next committee meeting.
And if I may come back, so that would give us a good insight into the success of the habitat changes. So that would be very, to me that would be very, very useful. Regarding last year, no, it was a year like no other, and how the team have held it together is quite remarkable. And I would like to thank all the colleagues for all the work they have done on this. Thank you.
May I second that from in terms of the year, it's been, as Councillor Young has said, it's been horrendous, and that people have carried on at all has been astonishing, let alone doing as much as they've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would associate myself with both of those comments, and I think we do need to be a bit careful, because so much of last year no one was permitted to be travelling, so I think it would be a little dangerous to draw too many conclusions on the basis of what was world's most remarkable year so far too soon. I think the fact that some of this additional information is coming forward to future meetings may be helpful in terms of measuring what changes, what different changes have made. We have actually got 3 recommendations in front of us. Are we happy to agree those? They are on page 10, top of page 10.
I'm happy to, if you're proposing from the chair, I'll be happy to second. Yeah.
Are you in agreement, Councillor Wrigley, or did you want to make suggestions?
I'm happy to note the progress. The status, I'm not clear on many of them. I think we could do with more information on the status of where things are. It is quite a short report, and as we've said, it has been a most astonishing year, and I'm not clear on quite where we are with many of the things and what has been delayed. Certainly extremely happy to record thanks to the staff for the dedication and adaptability. Absolutely 100%. I think I would like to see a follow-on to this report with the measures of success for the investments, even in retrospect, and with the details or an analysis, possibly not even an extensive analysis, but an analysis of what the year has done in terms of either accelerating projects or stalling projects or changing what we've needed to do, which I don't think there is any indication of at all. I mean, reading this report, you wouldn't have noticed that there was a pandemic. So I think we do need to acknowledge that and determine what changes that has made in the environment. Unless I've missed it because it is an extremely busy time and perhaps not the best time to be holding this meeting.
Well, on page 14.3.2 says the coronavirus pandemic has continued to significantly affect the ability of our site-based mitigation team to engage with the public, and as a result, etc., etc. So I think, from my personal views, it's a little unfair to suggest that it doesn't reflect the pandemic. But I'm not going to, I'm not going to kind of start arguing semantics on there. And Andy has raised a hand, so he may be able to add something to this. And we have, a number of these, the status of these, as we've already seen, are ongoing and to be part of future reporting. So, Andy, did you want to come back on that? And then Councillor Young, and then back to you, Councillor Wrigley.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. I'm hoping, I think it does reference in there that the pandemic has overshadowed the delivery of the strategy throughout the course of the last year. I would highlight, for example, in 4.2 about the kind of observations that have been undertaken by staff during that period as well, around the impact of sites being busier, for example, around recreational impact. And about how some of the responses to that, including the kind of pivot, if you like, towards social media usage and getting messages out that way. So that was one point. I just wanted to highlight as well, Chair, I think for me, the criticality, if you like, going forward of understanding the relationship between measures of success and monitoring more generally, and going back to the October 29 report, which also flagged up issues around staff resources and the ability to put together, that kind of framework overall and what was anticipated. So I think we need to be very clear in terms of what's expected, what's anticipated going forward, and whether we have the resources to do that, because that was very much touched upon back in October 2019 as well through the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
Yeah, no, we had examples of extra numbers on the heaths, and we had extra numbers on the Warren. There's various points in this agenda today that points that there are extra numbers. I think we can fully expect that we've got lessons that we need to learn from the extra numbers that are now visiting, and we can expect those numbers to continue for at least the next 5 years, because I don't think many of us would be going on long holidays to places like India. Now I think staycations are here to stay. Visitor numbers are going to be here, and now some of the work that we're anticipating to do in, say, 5 years' time, we might need to bring forward. Now there are I hate to imagine what this summer is going to be will actually look like. It's going to be very interesting, and now from what I understand, now visitor numbers is going to be astronomical. So yes, we have learned a lot from the COVID, and we can put that into the plans for the years ahead. But I think the report has picked up quite a few of the lessons already. Thank you.
Councillor Wrigley, did you want to come back?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, granted, yes, he does mention it, and Councillor Young's picked up some of those points, but there is no mention, for example, that the ex-estuary was closed to everything for 6 months. And what impact did that have? We don't know. We have no idea. So the idea that it was because, you know, everyone was banned from the water, and then we had a rush back, I would have thought there would be some mention of that in here. I feel that this has been a unique time, and there are lessons, as Councillor Young is saying, that we can learn from this, that we need to adapt in our forward plans, because he's absolutely right. Visitor numbers will be far higher than they have ever been. And not only will they be higher, we will have new visitors who've never been here before, who don't know how things work. And we're already seeing some impact of that. I would like to see something to put some thought into that, which I'm sure the thought has been done. I'm sure it's there, and I'm sure the measures of success for things like car parks and everything else has been thought about. I'm just not sure that we're getting them in the reports that we can see and measure and touch and say, yes, this is great, and wow, that was a fantastic thing to do. Hey, those signs worked really well, let's do more of those. Or hey, those signs didn't work at all, we don't want to do that again. And we're not getting that sort of feedback.
Okay, thank you. Andy, did you want to come back on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, I would highlight, the need for clarity here around monitoring, and I've already mentioned the fulsome report that will be coming to the committee in relation to the ex-estuary at the next meeting through Footprint Ecology, and that will provide that evidence versus, what a measure of success is. And I think how we frame that is critical going forward. Again, if I'm completely frank with members of the committee, I'm slightly confused as to what actually, and it's really key that we kind of bottom that out properly going forward. We will come back to it. We have tried to include measures of success in the forward-looking business plan. It's later on the agenda, but I really feel that there's a difference in expectations here that we really need to get to the bottom of, Chair.
Thank you. I mean, we have got 3 recommendations here, and I do think Andy makes a valid point. If we wish to ask for something different, we as committee members need to clearly articulate exactly what it is we are asking our officers to do. We have to be specific, because otherwise they're going to go away and do what they think we want them to do, and they will bring it back. And then if it's not what we wanted, we will then have another discussion. So what I'm asking for, and hopefully you're able to supply, Councillor Wrigley, if you wish to amend these recommendations, some very specific wording that we can put in there that will guide the preparation of future reports and guide the work. I mean, it's getting a little difficult because as with all these committees, our role is the strategic overview. The day-to-day work of doing that is for our officers to do. So we need to provide them with an appropriate strategic framework and then let them get on with doing that. It's not our job to go through their in-trade, as somebody said. So are you able to add anything to this report, Councillor Rigby, that is going to assist? Because I know you don't want, and I certainly don't want us to be looking at reports that aren't what we're expecting, but we have to give that clear outline so that people understand what it is we are expecting.
I'm somewhat at a loss as to how to make it any more clearer about looking for, measurable measures of success for investments that we're making, predicted outcomes. If it is, and I'm not confusing that with the monitoring issues, and that is just a slightly different thing. So I would like to see an additional report to be issued to update to go alongside the annual business plan report that outlines how we can judge each of these have been successful. I would be very happy to sit down offline with a team of people to go through and make suggestions. I'm very not keen on looking through people's in-trays, and that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is help to define the strategic framework so that my training is as an engineer, and as an engineer, you do something, you test it, if it works, you build on it, you do something more. That's a very simple basis in my head. I'm not an ecologist. I'm not an expert in studying flocks of birds and their migratory patterns, but I am an expert in finding out, doing something, has it worked? Have you got the expected result? The basic sort of scientific method. Are we making a change to human behavior? Are we to visitors' behavior? Are we making changes to the car parks that are more effective? Are we wasting money, or are we actually spending the money wisely? Is the conclusion that we need to come to, not have we ticked the task? So that extra report I would like to see with measures for success against the investments as we asked for in July. And I'm very happy to sit down at a later date with a team of anybody to go through and make some suggestions as to what those might be, and to help clarify any confusion in people's minds, if that would be helpful.
And I think the difficulty is any measurements. I mean, and again, looking at flocks of birds or watching people using the estuary is only as good as the day on which you're doing it. You actually might go out one day and say there were 3 people who were in the wildlife refuges where they shouldn't have been. The day before there might have been 27, and the 2 days after them may have been 0. And the same is similar with flocks of birds. And I think that's why we have got other professionals doing, but they only are snapshots in time. So we can take a general view over a period of time, but it's not like, I mean, I'm not being flippant, but it's not like looking at a bridge, which isn't going to go anywhere. It's still going to be there tomorrow as it was yesterday. So I understand what you're saying, but I do think we have to be careful that whatever we come up with isn't going to be an exact science. They can only be a cumulative set of observations over time. But
so yes, Chair.
Sorry, hang on. Councillor Young's been waiting patiently, and I interrupted him. But
yeah, I think we can go on and on about how we can measure success. And now I understand that Councillor Wrigley was an engineer. Now I understand a bit more. And he did make a good point about the lack of traffic on the estuary. I'd actually forgotten that. It seems so long ago. Was it actually 6 months? I'm not sure, but I wonder if we could put in the recommendations that we review and report lessons learned from COVID-19 over the last 2 years, 2020 to 2022. We can expect that we're going to be experiencing stuff for at least another year. So Now, I think we should be looking at the effect of COVID over the last 2 years, and all we need is a short report of, wow, there was massive extra footfall, there was more cars on the common, there was more tons of dog poo collected, etc. Now, that sort of thing. So we can then use that information for the years ahead. Maybe that would be very useful. Thank you.
Would that be helpful, Councillor Wrigley?
Absolutely, yes. I think that'd be a great thing to do. But just to come back to the point about measuring versus monitoring, you're absolutely right in terms of how many people are in the exclusion zone, how many birds have alighted in that place or another place. The things are already in place for looking at that. But there are many things that we're doing that aren't of that nature. So changing the car park, I'll come back to the two that we talked about in July. Changing the car park, which was a £200,000 investment, plus changing the website, which was, I can't remember how many tens of thousands that was. They were both substantial amounts of money on highly measurable things. Absolutely agree. Some things are not measurable. This is a long-term thing. It will have a long-term impact. We will measure it through the existing monitoring programs, which are designed to do exactly that. Perfect. Some things are highly measurable. The website traffic improved by 10% because we made it better. We can't just assume that we can measure the impact of the website by counting the number of birds.
Okay, so are we content that the officers have got that, or do we want to amend the recommendations that we have in front of us?
I think.
Sorry, Chair, having been stung in July, I would like to be very clear and have any wording read through to us, because it clearly caused some confusion for some
which is
period of time.
Just what I was going to say there. But I think it needs to come from yourselves.
Yes, I was going to say, so that's fine. I'm very happy with that, but we have got 3 recommendations in front of us. So if either of you wish to add, subtract, amend, this is the time to do it.
If I may,
can write, please, if we may.
If I may, Chair. So if we can pick up Councillor Young's suggestion that we ask for a report of the impact and lessons learnt of the COVID, of the period of pandemic, for input into future business plans. If I may paraphrase Councillor Young, I think that's about right. And secondly, if we can ask for measures of success on the projects that are significant investments.
For instance, car parking and website.
Correct.
Have you got that, Anita?
Can it be for example, not for instance, please? For instance implies that is a complete implies it isn't.
Okay. Just waiting to see if Anita's content.
So
I've got that.
Got the first one. I have a report of the impact and lessons learned of the pandemic period, and I didn't get the rest written down. So on what?
I think it's the effect of the COVID pandemic and the restrictions associated with them on both the work of the team and the use of the estuary and the other protected areas. Is that?
I think it's more to do with the estuary and the protected areas, because having been shut for 6 months, did that make any difference? Don't know. Might have done, might not have done. If it didn't, then it's kind of interesting, maybe it wasn't during a relevant period for any birds that were there. Maybe it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Shall I read what I've captured, Chair? And then
Thank you.
I think you might want to take bits out in the middle then. So a report, and I guess that this needs a timescale. At the moment, what I have is a report of the impact and lessons learned of the pandemic period on both the team and the use of the estuary and protected areas. I don't know whether we're taking of both the team out of the middle of that.
Happy to take that out if it's really is about the impact on the protected areas, isn't it? So yep.
Take that out. A time period and a report to come back to the committee, presumably. Just want to make sure we've got it right.
Before the next meeting.
For the
next meeting or before?
I like to see reports before meetings, not at meetings, but
okay.
You know, as soon as possible, really. You know, it's
okay. Okay. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
So can I write for, or do you want me to write before? Obviously, we want to be...
I'd like before, please.
Okay, so a report to come back to the committee. There will be a practical point about committee meetings that you may wish to touch on with physical meetings, but a report to come back to the committee of the impact and lessons learned of the pandemic period and the use of the estuary and protected areas.
Yep.
And
I'm happy with that.
Andy, anything to add operationally to that?
No, I get the intent. I think probably two things. One is we'll need to take this through the officer working group, and it would be sensible to garner the wider kind of input and knowledge and expertise of our partners in terms of what's happened, of course, over the course of the last 12 months. And secondly, I do think, you know, I can't quite leave this alone, I'm afraid, but just being really clear about what the monitoring framework does, the measures of success, what they do. We're about to come on to a report that introduces a further term around key performance indicators, and I'm slightly worried, and this is from a resource perspective as well, we're going to end up tying ourselves up in knots if we're not very careful. So I do think we need to work through that very carefully as well, at the same time as making sure we're meeting your expectations going forward.
Okay, I think that's a point well made. So, and the officer group represents all the authorities, doesn't it? So, yep.
So that was recommendation 1, Chair. I don't know whether you want to go through the rest and how they fit in or how they dovetail with what was already suggested, what we're deleting, and whether you want to vote on that one and move on, or.
I was going to say we were all content with the third one. Does the amendment deal with the issues you had on recommendation 2, Councillor Wrigley?
To be honest, I'd need to hear the whole thing again because we.
Well, it's the recommendation that's on page 10.
Yeah, no, I have the recommendations in front of me. I'm just because we talked through whilst the officer was reading that first recommendation back. I'm sorry. Could you read it back in its complete state, please, and I will pause and concentrate on it.
Certainly. A report to come back to the committee before the next meeting of the impact and lessons learned of the pandemic period and the use of the estuary and protected areas.
That's fantastic, but we haven't put in the measures of success anywhere yet.
Okay, I have that written as a second one, so we can move on to that, or did you want to tie that into the first one?
I'm happy for them to be separate reports. That's entirely fine.
So I had written from the discussion for this, what I thought was the second amendment, second recommendation, ask for measures of success that I think it was that relate to significant investments, for example, car parks and website. But probably needs some.
That. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Time scale
for the next meeting, before the next meeting, for the next meeting.
For the next meeting, I think. Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay.
So
shall I just read that? Shall I read that back again?
Please.
Ask for measures of success that relate to significant investments, for example, car parks and website, for the next meeting.
Is it clear within that resolution that it's relating to this 2021 annual business plan annual report and not sort of future things? It is about what has been done in this last year and how.
Well, that's what the agenda item we're discussing is. So I'm pretty clear it is.
I thought I was pretty clear in July as well, but I just want to be absolutely clear that we're going to get that for the last year's work that's gone through.
I'm
As I
happy to
say,
take
that-
it to however you wish. It's your
Well,
recommendation. None of us
the
want
agenda
confusion, so-
the agenda item is the report on the annual business plan for 2020 to 21. So if all those recommendations are coming under that agenda item, I think that is pretty clear.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you happy with that, Councillor Young?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm always happy.
Yeah. I said, are you happy with that? Okay, agenda item 8 is the
Sorry, Chair. Sorry
okay.
to interrupt. So the 3 recommendations that were set out in the report, we're leaving as they are and replacing with the 2 that we've just made. Is that the case?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're content with notes the progress made in delivering the 2020-21 annual business plan and recording our thanks. So,
Okay.
but it seems to me we're adding things in rather than taking things out.
Okay. So you're passing recommendation 1.
Yep.
Yes.
What about 2?
Recommendation 2 I'm still thinking about, because it says notes the status of mitigation measures from previous annual plans, as well as explanations given for measures subject to delay and revised completion dates. I'm a little concerned that we are very light on that information about delays and completion dates in this report. But I'm wondering whether that is something that should be detailed in the next business plan rather than going back to looking at the analysis of this one. So I might ask for recommendation number 2 to go on to say details of such delays and revised completion dates and situations and resolutions thereof to be elaborated in the 21-22 annual business plan.
Sorry, I'm not sure that I can that I would be happy to agree that, because what it's actually saying is it notes the status of mitigation measures from previous annual plans. So this is before 2020 to 21, as well as explanations given for measures subject to delay and revision completion dates. Now, I'm really not sure that how far back in history we want to go. I think going forward, I think we have established some changes that we wish to see. But what I don't want to do is have the officers going back over a report for, say, 2019, 2020, which is now 3 years back, and looking at what went wrong and why, because I don't think it helps protect the habitat, and I'm not sure it will give any useful information to this committee or to our successors who might be following us onto this committee. Those would be my concerns over what I think you're suggesting, if I've understood correctly.
I agree with you, Chair, in which case what I was saying wasn't what I was trying to imply.
Okay.
What I was trying to suggest was that the annual business plan for 2021 says we've tried to do 5 things. 3 of them were put back because of COVID, and it doesn't give us any more information other than that. What I'd like to see in the subsequent business plan in 21-22 is the 3 things that were put off from last year. Here's where they are, and here's where they're going to finish.
So can't we then go with 2 and add something to next year?
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
I'm happy to do that.
The committee will receive the additional information at in the next business plan or at the next meeting.
I'm happy to do something along those lines. Yes, Chair.
Okay.
So we go with 3 and plus the 2 new ones.
So are you talking about taking
Yeah.
2 out completely then?
No.
No.
We go with 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
Yep.
Are we happy with that, Councillor Wrigley?
Yeah, I'm just worried we're going to lose stuff between the but that's, you know, we explained it in last year's business plan. This is where it is. We don't need to report it ever again. You know, that's the we've gone a bit literal in some things, which is what.
Well, I was going to say we are you know, kind of dotting I's and crossing T's. I'm
happy to have the understanding that this stuff will be picked up in the next phase. You know, that's great. But I was happy with understandings before and got burnt. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, for the sake of time and for the sake of going forward, if I can get the reassurance that what was left over from the business plan before will be picked up and we'll get the completions in the subsequent ones. But it's not what I see in the report, and what is carried forward often is what we see in the reports.
I'm happy that there's a general understanding of that.
Can we make a note of that in the minutes, please?
I think sensibly, Chair, if Councillor Wrigley wants to add some wording, let's add it into the recommendation.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to give us some wording then, Councillor Wrigley?
And I just need to be able to write it down, please. My shorthand's not there.
The committee would like to see what am I trying to say? Because I tried it once and got to.
Can I just read back what you mentioned a moment ago, Councillor Wrigley?
Please.
So starting with your opening line of the committee would like to see. So if we call this, say, recommendation 6, so that it's clear as a separate recommendation, the committee would like to see the outstanding work not delivered from the 2020-21 plan goes forward to be included in the 21-22 plan. Is that correct?
That's nice and simple. I like that.
Okay.
Are we in agreement?
Yep.
Yes. And Debbie and Anita have got that written. So we've now got 6 recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're all in agreement. Yep.
Debbie's got the last one. We've got the
Debbie's got the last one.
The 2 we did just now. 1, 2, 3 off of the the report, and 6 that Debbie's captured the wording off.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Agenda item 8 is the financial report. Andy, are you taking us through this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I've just lost my place in the agenda, but it's very short.
Page 26. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Very short update from me. This is our usual financial updates in relation to contributions to the delivery of the strategy from developer contributions. Very happy to take any questions, Chair.
Are there any questions? Councillor Wrigley.
Sorry, Chair. Developer contributions, understand, yes, no problem. It is what it is. Who quite knows where it's going to be and what it's going to look like and all the rest of it. It's all very tricky. I was having some more difficulties in some of the expenditure section. And I think I need more detail. So, for example, paragraph 2.2, table 6, I think it is, on page 30. Cross-site mitigation and expenditure recommended as part of the 2021 annual business plan. Measure, staff, dog project, vehicles, boat, tax, insurance, fuel, maintenance, which is quite a bundle of things that are actually split out separately in most of the financial tables. Budget revenue 167,810, 167,000, 168,000 all bar. Actual expenditure 203,000 with a 35,000 overspend on the budget, and yet we have little or no explanation. We have a brief note below that doesn't really give me a comfortable feeling of why we have overspent by 35,000 on a range of different items there. I'm sure it's all very easily explainable, but I feel that it sort of typifies the report, giving us not enough detail to understand quite where things are going and why.
Andy, are you able to help on this one?
Thank you, Chair. I will attempt to. So yes, it is a quirk, as I understand it, of how things are recorded by financial year and what falls into our financial year, what falls just before it, so to speak. I can, if it would be helpful, provide a written explanation to Councillor Wrigley just to detail that, to make sure I've given you an accurate response.
Is that acceptable?
I cannot approve the report until I have that. So I will put the approval of this pending that further detail.
Okay, but well, as I say, I mean, you know, if the officer doesn't have the information to hand, then we will have to park this until a future meeting. Yeah.
Chair, sorry, I should have added that there is no overall overspend. It is a question of accounting periods, but I will, you know, make sure there's a written response to clarify that position.
Yeah. I mean, just as a general point, I think to kind of aid the smooth running of a meeting. I mean, if there are specific financial questions when the papers come out that you identify, it might in future be helpful if we could alert the officers, because you know, I think there are reports where it is acceptable to ask questions, but detailed financial stuff like this, which clearly has been supplied by other officers, you know, it's not unreasonable that we have to go back and ask for them. But if we need to leave this one and look at the financial report next time, that's fine. Councillor Young, did you have a comment?
Only that we are noting the recommendations to note. It's not saying that we're happy with them, and I'm happy with them as well. But the recommendation is to note.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have views, Councillor Wrigley?
It worries me if we don't have any recourse to further questions on it, because if we note it, it's done and it's finished, and we never come back to it.
Well, no, it's not, because the officer has given you an undertaking that he will respond to your question. I mean, I think we can note the report and accept that you will get a reply to your question, whether you like the reply or not. when it's forthcoming, again, doesn't kind of impinge on the noting of the report.
I feel I am still reluctant to even note the report.
You don't want to note the report. Well,
no.
If we can't all agree, then we can't go forward, because that's the way this committee this committee operates. So we have to accept that you don't wish to note the report, and we will see it at the next meeting. Well, I hope we will be happy to note it.
I'm sure we will.
Chair, do you want to make a recommendation to that effect, or are you content just that we'll minute that there are some questions that have been raised and it will come back?
I think note a question, and it's possible to actually, it was a very specific question raised. So I think if we note that the question was raised on table 6, whichever page, I've lost it now, to page 30, to which a written reply will be supplied, and we'll have another look at the report at our next meeting.
Lovely, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 9 is the wildlife communications key performance indicators. This is Anne Mountjoy's report. Are you presenting this as well, Andy, on Anne's behalf?
I am indeed, Chair. Thank you. So yes, I think the refresh of the website has been raised already. This is an attempt to define measures of success, if you like, around those key performance indicators. for how that refresh would work. You can see those are identified in paragraph 1.4 of the report. There's also some benchmarking as well, as it is available in terms of existing websites, traffic, clicks, etc. In the appendices, and also just to flag, there's a small segue into, if you like, social media and some lessons learned, including the best platforms moving forward as well. So hopefully it gives you a rounded appreciation of how that will work going forward. Just turning back to the recommendations themselves, those two recommendations. One is to note the results of the communications report for the period June 2020 to January 21, and to receive further communications reports going forward around those key performance indicators for the new website, which I think will be complete a bit later this summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Joe. Did I hear from Andy that the website would be going live later this year?
Yeah, it was in the annual business plan report as well.
Yeah. What I did notice is on the presentation in the report, some of the photographs were not actually of this area. I presume they're just dummies in there, and the right photographs will be put in once it goes live. But it does look a lot better website than the previous one. The previous one is a bit dull, and we need to have the right reflection on the website. And one of the measures that we can obviously do is, once the new site goes live, we can see how much better, how much more traffic there is going to be on there. That's going to be very easily measurable. Thank you.
Councillor Wrigley, any comments?
I think I quite like this. Won't expect me to say that. I think it's good. I think the idea of setting up key performance indicators for the communications is good. I think having them tracked in time is good. If you recall, in a previous meeting, we talked about seeing these graphically so we can see whether the trends are up or down, because that's always the important thing with things like websites and page views and Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it. The absolute number is not that relevant. I'm a little confused on the benchmarks, and I'm not quite sure how these will be effective. I can understand wanting to define some benchmarks of where we are, which is what I presume this is trying to do, but I'm not convinced that odd pages from the different authorities' sites will necessarily give us anything to compare against in the future, but it's a good sort of starting place to start thinking about it, to see the sorts of numbers that we're talking about. So in terms of the Appendix B, apart from it being so small I can't actually see it, I'm getting old, I need better glasses. It is hard to read it in terms of numbers. I would like in future, if this can be a graphical, which is just taking these exact same numbers and putting them in graphical format, which I think we talked about before. You then get a much better idea of what's going on across the time. How do these numbers relate to the benchmarks in Appendix A? If we're doing benchmarks, what are we going to use them for? And how do these numbers relate to those?
Andy, I'm wondering if you need to go back to Anne Mountjoy to ask those questions, or maybe you do know the answer.
Well, I think you've probably come to my rescue slightly there, Chair, so thank you. Yes, I will need to go back to Anne, who's the expert in these matters. I would just caution that we need to make sure that whatever we instigate is proportionate and manageable within the limited resource we have, which is 1 day a week of Anne's time. And I absolutely get the point around meaningful benchmarks as well. I will check this with Anne, but certainly I would imagine that was seen as the best and most available, if you like, benchmarks currently. But we need to ensure that whatever we do around benchmarking is meaningful.
Yep. Okay. Are we okay with that, Councillor Wrigley?
When are we expecting the next update of this? Is this something we'll get at every meeting, or is this something we'll get once every 5 years? Or never again?
I think we may be. It's in our gift to ask for that. I mean, I wonder if how we meet quarterly, don't we? In the next, might be worth perhaps having a twice yearly report on this rather than an every meeting. Again, given that we only have 1 day a week of Anne's time, but happy to discuss it.
If I might suggest, Chair, I think that if this was something that was done for every meeting, it becomes quicker and easier to do 3 months worth rather than half a year trying to figure out how to do 6 months worth. I think it would be a faster task to do it less data more often than it would
Andy.
be to do it big data once a year or twice a year.
Andy, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I would just flag the second recommendation does reference April 2022. If there is a desire for more regular quarterly reporting, again, I can take that away, but I'm sorry to sound like a stuck record. I do need to make sure that is achievable within the resources we have. If I can just add that caveat.
And we don't want to find ourselves in the situation that because we've asked for more regular reports, we're going to delay publishing the website because the 1 day a week's been used collecting data rather than revamping the website.
Chair, if I can, I would just go back to the debate from October 2019 around the overall, if you like, monitoring framework as well. That did put an option forward for a 0.5 FTE monitoring officer, which presumably that post would have had, if you like, all of this data, this information, the dashboard at their fingertips. That wasn't progressed. I just need to keep that under review in terms of what is manageable for existing staff members.
Yep. Councillor Young.
Yeah, just thinking about we've put the report says that that the measures will be reported in a year's time. Can that be in a year's time, and then we can then discuss it next year? If we don't hit the targets that we want, then we might then require the monitoring to be reduced to 6 monthly or 3 monthly, depending on how the numbers turn out in a year's time. Now, if things are looking good, leave it. If things are looking bad, then we should then bring the reviews to a shorter period of time.
Andy, did you want to come back on that? You're muted.
Sorry. It was just a suggestion, Chair, that for the next meeting, whether it's possible to incorporate something on this around scheduling of reporting, if you like, within the measures of success wider report as well, that would help just give us a bit of time just to consider the implications of that.
I think that might be helpful. Councillor Wrigley.
I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to have feedback from the officer in terms of how much work this would be to do the reports. But from my experience and when I'm in the staff, my staff in my own business where we were doing this is a few minutes. It's not 3 days worth. If it's 3 days worth, we're doing something wrong. This should be a few minutes just to get these numbers and put them in a graph. It's not big effort. And to pick up the point from Andy, Yeah, exactly right. These measures of success are not things that should be hard. They're not things that are big. They are things that are obvious. They are things that are there. And it's not about needing more staff to do it. It's about thinking about what we're doing and observing what their impact is. So this should be a relatively small amount of work to report on a every meeting basis. But I'm very happy to hear a report and a proposal from the officer at the next meeting. But my ideal would be to see this every quarter, because then we can see the impact. As Councillor Young said, we don't quite know what's going to be the impact of people coming down over the next year, 2 years, wherever. We will get
Okay.
an idea of that from what's going on the website and the communications.
Okay, so we'll get an update at the next meeting, and that at the next meeting we'll decide how frequently we're going to ask for updates on this. But we are at the moment noting the results, and we're receiving further communications, and we probably need to amend recommendation 2, don't we? That we'll receive further communications on key performance indicators and benchmarks at the next meeting, and possibly replace for the new website in April 2022 with at the next meeting. Sorry, did that make sense, Debbie and Anita?
I think I've
Yep.
captured. Oh, Debbie, have you got it? Or
Yep. So it's replacing the end of recommendation 2. So if I read it out in full.
Yeah.
Recommendation 2 will now read as receives a further communications report on communications key performance indicators, KPIs, and benchmarks to the next meeting.
Yep.
And to then decide how frequently updates should follow.
If you want that in.
Yeah. Let's add that in for the
explicit. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. It may
Debbie,
not be us at the next meetings, who knows? But yes, let's add that in for absolute clarity.
So Debbie, and to then decide how frequently updates should follow is what I captured.
Or how about to review the frequency of reports? Yep. Fewer words. Happy with that?
Yep. I'm seeing nods. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. And then we move on to agenda item 10, which is the 2021 to 2022 annual business plan and 5-year delivery plan. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. So just to pick up a theme, there are 2 specific items of significant expenditure scheduled for the next year. One in relation to the Pedbed Heaths and the car parking, which has been identified already. I would just add that Kim Strawbridge is on the call as well, Chair, in relation to the delivery of that programme. I just wanted to highlight in particular the measures of success identified in paragraph 3.11. So proposed expenditure of just over £180,000, and you can see 3 bullet points there, which are an attempt, and it would be really useful to have the committee's feedback on this, about whether those measures of success are felt to be adequate or there's anything missing there. And equally with the proposed works at Dawlish Warren in relation to the Petterworth and fencing, which are of a smaller scale, proposed expenditure is £6,300 overall, but again, whether the measures of success anticipated are adequate. And finally, just to go back to the recommendations, Chair. So those are, so I'm just scrolling back up. They are to approve the 2021-22 annual business plan and the commitments and actions set out therein, to note the updated 5-year delivery plan, and finally, and this is the criticality, if you like, around what sits within the remit of this committee and what is progressed by others, and that particularly relates to the Dawlish Warren Beach Management Scheme, which is, if you like, a Team Bridge District Council and Environment Agency scheme, and doesn't formally sit within the remit of this committee, but is nonetheless very, if you like, germane to how the strategy is delivered. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Young.
Yes, measures of success for the car parks. One of the issues that we're trying to resolve is the on-road parking, and therefore what was the on-road parking situation last year, and what is now, once the car park is done, what are now it's going to be the police that are going to be monitoring this. Now, is there more issues after we've done the car parking? That's the key measure for the car parks, I would have thought.
Andy, did you want to come back on that point?
Yeah, that seems sensible. I don't know whether Kim Strawbridge wants to come in on this point in terms of her experience on the ground, so to speak, as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on that. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
So obviously we carry out sort of day-to-day regular checks across the site. So our rangers are on site, as well as the mitigation wardens being around regularly as well. So we have a pretty good understanding of where the hotspots for issues are. The roadside parking, we currently don't have formal data on how much roadside parking there is. Obviously that would take a bit of time to go around frequently and record. That is something we could do, but again, kind of back to Andy's point, is it has to be proportionate. So if we've got people driving around a lot of the time recording cars, it has a value, but when they're doing that, they're not doing other things. So for us, it's a balance. But we do know where the hotspots are, and those areas will be dealt with as part of the wider car park strategy. So as well as tidying up the car parks and making them easier for people to access, we will be actively making it harder for people to park at the roadside. So if you go back to the original report, you'll see there were actions in there around putting physical barriers in the way, so banking at the side to prevent people pulling off onto verges and those sorts of measures. And particularly in this first phase of work, we're working with highways to look at reducing the size of some of the passing places in one particular location, which over the past year has been incredibly busy, and actually caused a bit of an issue for locals getting up and down that road as well. So roadside parking is certainly a very large part of the strategy, and something that we're looking to monitor where we can. If there was a need to collect harder data on that, we would have to look at how we do that and how we resource that. It can be done, but obviously it comes at a time. Longer term, we will be, I think it's highlighted in the report, there will be car park counters going in as part of the works. So for all the formal parking areas, we will be able to record very accurately every single vehicle that is going in and out. And that will be made much easier by the new design of the car parks, which are also designed to reduce the need for operational vehicles to go in, which will make the data much clearer and much more specific to visitors, rather than, for example, the MOD travelling through our operational vehicles going through. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into that.
Thank you, Kim. Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you, Kim. That is absolutely perfect. You have just outlined what should be the measures of success. That the hotspots you're currently monitoring are reduced and less problematic, that you have fewer complaints of people in the areas dealing with bits and pieces that's causing you time and difficulty, that you are able to count the number of cars going into the, you've elucidated there very clearly what you're currently doing, what the current problem is, and what you want the investment to achieve. And that, to me, is the measures of success. That's it. It's not difficult. I'm not asking, shouldn't be asking to employ 10 more people to drive around in cars to count numbers of cars. That's not, you're absolutely right. That's not what we should be doing. But you've already got that data. You've got that understanding. It doesn't have to be, the absolute numbers of cars that turned left on a Friday with their blinkers turning right. It's not that sort of level of detail. It's something has prompted you to want to do this in the first place. What is it? How bad is the problem? And what are we expecting the solution to look like? And you've just said it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Young.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, just to say, I'll be happy to know if complaints of unsocial parking has gone down. If it's gone down, we've got success. I'm up there quite a lot of the time, and I'll be able to see now if it's a success or failure fairly quickly. Thank you.
Okay, we've got 3 recommendations on this report. Are we happy with these as they stand?
Given that we have just altered the measures of success, or we've just talked about a clearer way, a simpler way of getting measures of success than are detailed here, I think I would like to see a revision to this report.
Sorry, you want to see a revision? Well, the recommendations we have in front of us are about approving this business plan. So if we're not going to accept, if you're going to propose that we ask them to rewrite the business plan, then we clearly can't approve these recommendations, but there are consequences to not doing that. And I think they are outlined below the recommendations. Is that what you're proposing, Councillor Wrigley?
Well, I would, if you force me into that position, then yes, I will. But what I'm suggesting,
Councillor Wrigley, I'm not trying to force you into anything. No, hang on. With respect, we have a report in front of us, and we have proposed recommendations. We can approve the recommendations as they stand. We can amend them, or we can choose not to do that. But with this report in particular, I would just draw your attention to the risk paragraph underneath those recommendations. That's all I'm doing. I'm drawing your attention to those. But if you, as I say, this operates on consensus. If we don't all agree, we can't do anything. So what I'm saying is, if you're not content with these recommendations, would you offer your alternative proposals, please?
Thank you, Chair. My apologies for using the word "you." I was not intending to make it in that way. If my only choice is to say no, then I will say no. But I don't think we have satisfactory measures of success in this. I would be happy to approve this on the condition that the measures of success were rewritten and amended.
Well, I think for the officers' benefit, we have to be clear about what we are asking them to do. Otherwise, we're asking them to guess what we're going back to guessing. So, just in terms of a report recommendation, if it seems to me that you're not minded to approve the annual business plan as it stands. So
not unconditionally, no.
Okay, so what would you like to change?
I would like revisions of the measures of success as we have just discussed. So we've just had a fantastic example of what it should be. And unless and until we can make changes to these, we are in a very difficult position as a committee, because our only option appears to be yes or no. And at the moment, I don't think this is giving us what we need.
Well, we spent a great deal of time discussing key performance indicators, and you know, kind of, frankly, if the officers haven't got what we're asking for now, I would be very surprised. My concern over this one is that we don't have a meeting for several months, and that we are potentially putting ourselves, all 3 authorities, in a position of high risk, which I would not be feel comfortable about doing, because if we don't have an accepted business plan, the consequences of for all the authorities in terms of Natural England saying, well, if you don't have an accepted business plan, we are going to put a halt to any development of local plans and future delivery. And I think that is a very great risk for us all to take on behalf of our authorities, for the sake of wording around measurements of success. That's my anxiety on this one. Councillor Young, going to bring Councillor Young on this one, and I'll come back to you.
May I make a suggestion that on one, approve the 2021-22 annual business plan, Appendix A, and the commitments and actions set out therein, and to incorporate measures of success.
Okay. Kim, you wanted to come back in, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the point that obviously if I have the chance to talk for a couple of minutes, I can probably cover a lot more ground than is included in quite a concise report. So the sort of measures of success that I was talking about 5 minutes ago are very similar to what is actually in the current report. I just obviously had the opportunity to elaborate quite a bit more than the opportunity is there to write in text. So I wouldn't feel that there's a lot more that could be added to the measures of success. It would just be given a little bit more detail. So if the sticking point is around the measures of success in relation to the car parks, it might be that unless you specifically ask for more detail, it wouldn't change that much. I hope that's clear.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wrigley, I'll come back to you.
That might be the answer there. Maybe the answer is to approve this on the condition that the measures of success are elaborated in more detail for the specific projects.
So that is that going back to Councillor Young's suggested amendment to recommendation 1 about including additional detail on measurements of success?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, so if recommendation 1 read approves the 2021-22 annual business plan, Appendix A, and the commitments and actions set out therein, including reporting on measures of success.
If I may say so, Chair, that doesn't quite say that we want the extra detail.
Okay. So what would you propose?
So if we say approves the business plan, commitments and actions set out therein,
and to incorporate extra measures of success, extra details of measures of success.
Yeah, what I picked up, Chair, was to incorporate measures of success in more detail for each project, which ties together the two comments. I don't know if that's of assistance.
I was just wondering if we wanted to sort of separate them out so that we can sort of put one document to one side rather than trying to rewrite documents, and have something with more detail about each one with measures of success, as Kim has just outlined. Whether that might be the answer, just in practical terms, happy either way, but as long as we can get those details somehow put in there and brought forward within a reasonable time frame. Preferably before the end of the year, I mean, it doesn't have to be everything immediately, but before we start a project, we should know what we're expecting from it, is what I'm trying to get to.
Well, I'm content with that, with that proposal that's just been read out. Could you read it again for me?
Mm-hmm. Certainly. So it would be the start of recommendation 1 in the report approves the 2021 to 2022 annual business plan, brackets Appendix A, close back brackets, and the commitments and actions set out therein to incorporate measures of success in more detail for each project.
Can we have
I'm happy with that.
Sorry, can we have a time scale on that, please? Because I don't want it to be at the end of the year.
What time scale would you want to propose?
I always say next meeting, but that may be unreasonable for all of them. It may be reasonable to look at things that are happening now and immediate we know more of to be sooner rather than later. I mean, I don't want to tie people's hands down to something that is unachievable, but I don't want to put in a date that is so far in advance that we forget all about it.
And I mean, I think that's my concern also, that not all measurements of success, I mean, they're not all moving at the same rate. So what might be appropriate for the next meeting might be entirely meaningless. So can we actually say for in 6 months' time, because 6 months will be halfway through the next year, the 21-22 year, and that gives us a compromise, but it also gives time for some of those, you know, some of those to get some traction.
I think that's a fair idea, Chair, but I might ask for an update at the next meeting.
Well, could we put 6 months in and ask for a verbal update on any significant changes at the next meeting? Would that be an appropriate compromise?
Yep.
Yep.
Works for me.
I think we might just need to split this into two, perhaps,
Okay.
Chair.
Yeah.
Because the first half is the approval of the business plan.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a done and dusted.
Yeah.
So if we left one as it is, Debbie, I might need your help with wording, and then let's pop in a new 2 or a 1A or whatever we want to call it, which is to note that the annual business plan should incorporate, to note that, so you're looking for a report to come back.
We're looking for a report in 6 months' time on the key performance indicators in the 2021-22 annual business plan.
Sorry, Chair,
So,
it's not the key performance indicators, because that goes back to just that.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, it's measurements of success. Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Beg your pardon. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, we're looking for a report on the measurements of success.
so perhaps,
can I come in with a suggestion?
Yeah,
or?
have a go, Deb. Yeah, all yours.
So it's effectively a 1A, for want of a better reference on this recommendation. So it's in relation to the 2021-22 annual business plan that the measures of success detail is incorporated in 6 months' time, and we can put in a month if that helps, with a verbal update to the committee on progress at the next meeting. So
I think the word report needs to go in there somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With a verbal report.
Yeah.
Or just a report.
That a verbal report. The report is brought back to the committee in 6 months' time, which incorporates measures of success in more detail for each project, with a verbal.
Okay, but my understanding was that Councillor Wrigley was looking for those changes to be made within that 6 month period. Ideally, it might not necessarily be possible, but his point was that he didn't want those things to happen right at the end of the term of the plan.
Which is why we're looking at the 6 months point. Yeah.
Yeah. So hence why I worded it that the detail on the measures of success is incorporated by 6 months' time from this date, with a verbal report to the committee on progress with that at their next meeting. Because your next meeting is in July, which is obviously in a couple of months' time.
Yeah, I'm seeing nods. Councillor Wrigley, Councillor Young, yes.
That
yes.
Works for me. Can I make a suggestion that rather than necessarily wait for 6 months and then have a long discussion about it because it's all not what was expected, that we actually have perhaps informal discussions to try to work out what we're looking for in between?
Informal discussions between?
Well, I'm happy to sort of talk to people and review what's done so far and look at it before we get to a point of having to put it on a table and say, no, that's not what we meant.
Well, do you mean an informal meeting of the 3 councillors, or?
Yeah, well, whoever is appropriate to do it. I mean, it just seems a daft situation to try to go over a lot of different business in a short meeting and then have some complicated stuff and then try to work out what it is in 6 months' time that we meant 6 months ago it would surely be better to continue talking about it in the time in between.
Andy, do you want to come in on this?
Thank you, Chair. It was only one very specific point. I was just a bit concerned by the reference to a verbal update. For me, one of our, I think, our key challenge, and where potentially expectations differ, is our interpretation of what is expected. I think for me, the latitude, if you like, to get that wrong is greater with a verbal update than with a written, as we've just perhaps discussed in this report. So therefore, my preference would be to ensure it's all written down in black and white, and that would make things, I think, clearer for yourselves and the committee members, and would provide visibility before the meeting itself as well.
Okay. I was trying to steer a course between kind of like too much demand on officer time that might actually not provide us with very much information in the short term. I think two different things going on there, because Councillor Wrigley is suggesting conversations happening in between meetings, and I know the officer group does meet between meetings. I know at the last meeting when we reached an impasse, I made a suggestion about a meeting between the three of us and our respective leaders, and I know Councillor Bialik approached Councillor Connett, and Councillor Connett wasn't happy to do that. So that's why that stopped in terms of where we were. That looks like that's a surprise to you. Maybe we need
my interpretation of what I heard from Councillor Connett.
Well, I'm going to say you and I we're both hearing it differently from our respective leaders, but that's as maybe. My worry is that if we start meeting informally outside the meeting, and the officers are also meeting informally, where do those two things come together? And I fear confusing us all.
Perhaps, Councillor, we can ask for feedback from our respective officers.
Yep.
In the meantime, and have the conversation through them.
Yep. I think that's really helpful. Yeah, because that communication already exists, and I would certainly find that more acceptable and more helpful. Councillor Young.
Yeah, just that it might help that once a report is done with the measures incorporated, that it is sent to us by email for us to comment, to say, yeah, you've got it right, or can you do a little bit more here or a little bit more there. That I think that might be helpful.
I'm going to say that might actually be sufficient. Yep.
Yeah. No, to me, that no, send me a report, and I think, oh my God, no, that's far too much. It might be just a little bit more.
Does that make sense to you, Councillor Wrigley?
I think that is the piece that is missing in this whole process on this committee. Yes.
Okay. Anita,
could I just flag that obviously in governance terms, East Devon particularly has a very clear push towards ensuring that all meetings are carried out in public, and
yes,
there aren't meetings that are happening in the background. I'm not suggesting there's anything incorrect about it, but we do have a very clear policy at East Devon on transparency. And I suspect, I'm going to speak for Councillor Young, I suspect there would be a reluctance to start seeing any allegations or suggestions that the business is being done in private. So that would, I think, would just be the East Devon governance view.
Thank you, and that you articulated very clearly my concern as well, that none of us wants to be in the situation of members of the public fearing that decision making isn't happening in an open and visible and transparent way. We only have to look to Parliament to see where that gets you, don't we? Okay.
Which wallpaper?
Okay, so have we approved the recommendations? I just want to be absolutely clear for our officers' point of view. We have got the new recommendations. Are we happy with that, Councillors Young and Wrigley? Yes.
Based on what we oh sorry, people moved around, based on the addition of 1A, as
Yes.
we have discussed, with a written report to the next meeting.
Yes.
And based also on the understanding that we will have communications through our officers of the progress of that in the officer working group, then yes.
Thank you. You content with that, Councillor Young?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fine with that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Chair, can I just say, I think that was, Chair, I think that's a, Councillor Rigg just said written report to the next meeting. I think it was written report at 6 months, wasn't it?
No, it was
I think Andy was suggesting that a written report was easier and more helpful than a verbal
Oh, I see. Sorry.
report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And next meeting. So where do we stand, Chair, on recommendations 2 and 3?
I hope we've agreed them.
Just to be clear.
Have we agreed recommendations 2 and 3?
Two, we are just noting the 5-year delivery plan, which, as far as I can work out, is, although there isn't actually an Appendix A specified in my pack that I'm looking at, I'm very confused because I'm assuming it's just the spreadsheets of coloured spreadsheets of numbers. Is that right? Is that Appendix A?
It's the peach.
Through you, Chair.
Yes.
So the delivery plan is the forward 5-year rolling kind of programme. So yes.
But it's the numeric plan, not the details of projects.
Yes, that's correct. It's the spreadsheets, effectively the tables.
Okay. So yes,
Okay.
I'm happy to note the spreadsheets.
Okay. And 3? We content with that?
I think we have to be, because there's not much else we can do. We're waiting on the Environment Agency and TDC.
Indeed.
I think the Coastal Agency for the beach management plan. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I just want to be absolutely certain.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
Okay, fine. So we have agreed all of those recommendations. Thank you. So the next agenda item is, I believe, agenda item 11, which is the risk register report.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this is if you like, a standing item of business for the committee. Just wanted to flag up, as was discussed earlier, the impact of the pandemic that is assessed very clearly as the most severe risk within the assessment. And you'll see there's 4 specific recommendations around noting the categorisation and identification of those risks. And particularly number 2 obviously highlights the impact of the pandemic, and it will be good to bring the learning and the evidence around that to the next committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Young, was that, were you agreeing with it, or was that a question?
Propose them as written.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wrigley?
I think it's all fine. My only question is whether 12 months is the right length of time to wait for a check on this, because as we know, and as we've sort of said a number of times, the situation is very fluid and changing. And in 12 months' time, mind you, having said that 12 months ago, I'd have probably said in 12 months' time it'll all be different. And it's not really, is it? So is 12 months the right length of time, or should we ask for something sooner than that? Should we ask for an assessment as to whether there's any need to revise it in 6 months?
Or we could just receive an updated risk register report in 6 months.
Yeah, my hesitancy in doing that is I know that going through and doing a thorough review and recompiling the full risk report, risk register, could be a reasonable amount of time, and so I would hesitate to necessarily ask for a complete update of it in 6 months if it wasn't necessary. But if it were necessary, then it would be good to have. I'm not sure whether there's any recommendation from an officer as to that, or whether they consider that 12 months is appropriate because nothing's going to change in that time.
Andy, did you have a view on that?
It's difficult given the circumstances we're in, I think, Chair. I think it would be good, because we could have come through an exceptionally busy summer, for example, and the recreational pressure arising from that could have been really quite extreme, conceivably, and that would absolutely affect the risk register. Perhaps given the wider circumstances, we can work towards an update on a more frequent basis, 6 months, and if by exception there's anything that points towards that, bringing that to the next committee, I think we need to do that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're amending point 4 to say received an updated risk register report in 6 months, but other than that, we're happy with those recommendations. And if there are significant changes, they will be brought to a meeting beforehand. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of the formal agenda. So, thank you everyone for taking part in the meeting. Thank you to all the officers from the various authorities and Councillors Wrigley and Young. Thank you to anyone watching online. Hope you've had an entertaining afternoon. And we will now be asking that the live streaming ends, but please be mindful of the fact that until that's confirmed, it is live streaming. And the next committee meeting will be in the new council year, and chair of that passes then to Teambridge. So I assume, Councillor Wrigley, that you'll be chairing the next meeting. So
as far as I'm aware.
Look forward to that if I'm reappointed to this committee. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Chair, for your work on this.